All right, welcome everyone to today's Lunch and Learn. We've got our special guest, Shannon Peel, who has a wonderful company called Market Appeal. And so I hope everyone enjoys this presentation. And if you're not already aware, we are Resource YYC. We're a co-working space in downtown Calgary, and we have private offices, dedicated desks, and drop-in options. So if you need a boardroom or just a nice office to work for the day, come check us out. Over to you, Shannon.
Hey, thank you very much for having me here today to talk about on being vulnerable in your brand storytelling. Scary word, vulnerability, and I'm going to be talking about vulnerability in a couple of ways. Vulnerability that is bad and vulnerability that is good. And yes, there is vulnerability that is good. So let's start with talking about vulnerability. And of course, this is going to be, I am so sorry. Can you, this was working. I can't even get the thing to, okay, here we go. Sorry about that, folks. Technical difficulties, if we're gonna have them, I'm gonna be the one to have them. So, oops, let's go back. So what is brand vulnerability? Brand vulnerability, well, there's a couple of times. There is your brand being vulnerable to attack, being vulnerable to, you know, in the bad way, where it's, you have a weakness and you want to structure your brand so that there are no weaknesses that are going to fall down. But I'm talking about being transparent, open, and honest with your audience to elicit an emotional connection and build trust and earn loyalty. Now, there is risk in this. When I say vulnerability, what are some of the things that you feel right away? I mean, negative stuff? Are you thinking, oh, but I don't want to get ridiculed. I don't want people to know that about me. You know, I don't want to lose opportunities. So there's some risk in being vulnerable. But there's also some rewards in being vulnerable the right way. That's the important piece. There's being vulnerable that will attack you and it is a risk. And then there's vulnerability that is done when it's done the right way, brings you a lot of rewards. Because in today's world, consumers, the younger consumers, those Gen Zs that are becoming young adults and spending money, and those millennials with all of their money, they love to support brands that support them. They're looking for those brands that align with their values and align with what they want the world to be. So, but there's a big problem with that. Now, we have a bunch of social justice movements happening, whether it's Black Lives Matter, Me Too, the Convoy. There's tons of them. There's tons that you can think of before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. And a lot of brands are doing what we call trend jumping. Now, that means that they're jumping on a trend on social media, hoping to, you know, get some visibility for their brand. And that's where you have the risky vulnerability. If you can hear those sirens, I really apologize. I do live downtown Vancouver. It'll be just 1 second. So trend jumping the wrong way can make your brand vulnerable, especially because it's not authentic. It's not in line with your values, your culture, or your behavior. And that makes you vulnerable to criticism, ridicule, because it's not a story about vulnerability. It's just a story that makes you vulnerable. We want to avoid those. This is one of those types where Starbucks asked all of its baristas to write on the hashtag race together on all of the cups and encouraging them to talk to the customers about race and start a dialogue about race. Not sure when someone picks up their latte, their $5 latte on the way to the office, that they want to stop and have a conversation about race with the barista. This actually became, they got a lot of backlash over this as it being an inappropriate time and an inappropriate way for them to try to lead the conversation around race. Pepsi, and unfortunately, one of the anyway, that person. Pepsi got a lot of backlash about this, where it's a video or it's a commercial about a protest that's happening. You've got the riot police facing off against the protesters, and here comes the Jenner girl with a Pepsi, and oh, everything's okay now. We're all happy, and they got a ton of pushback on that. Why? Let's see, the audience that they were representing in the commercial were protesters. Protesters are very vocal, they're very opinionated, and they don't like trend jumping. They get very offended by any brand or anyone who is trying to make a buck off of their social justice cause. They do like the ones where it aligns, though. They are looking for ones where it's authentic and it's real. But if it's not authentic and real, and it's just this is called shark jumping. It has to do with, shark jumping comes from Happy Days, the beginning of Happy Days, where Fonzie is water skiing and he jumps a shark, and it just doesn't make sense. Why would he be water skiing? Why would he be jumping a shark? It's just a gimmick. That's shark jumping, and that's what this is, and it really does not look good on your brand. So trend jumping can work, though. Like I said, those protesters, those people that are in those movements are looking for brands that align with their value system. And it has to align with your current brand story. If you have a business and you have a bunch of people in it and you got diversity, you have people of all different races and ethnics and religions working for you, and you post something about that on the Black Lives Matter movement, it makes sense because it's aligning with you. You are in line with that story. However, those companies that jumped on the Black Lives Matter movement that only had white people in their business, they got a lot of backlash and a lot of shaming and a lot of ridicule. So you don't want to be that person. So you want to share those stories that elicit real vulnerability. This is who I am. We're looking for those kind of stories. Who am I? The personal vulnerability. And you want to be authentic, true to your values, and actively involved in that movement or that cause or that area. Now, if you've been around as long as I have, you know the tagline, the best a man can get. And Gillette's ads when I was growing up was all about men shaving and getting the girl, getting the car, getting the job. What can shaving with a Gillette get you out of life? Well, Gillette decided that they were going to change that. They were changing their value system. They were changing their message. And this was during the Me Too movement. And they decided that they were going to create this commercial called We Believe, and it's the best men can be. So they're changing the tagline from the best a man can get to the best men can be. And I don't know if you remember the commercial, but it was all about all the toxic masculinity, sexual assault, mansplaining, bullying, all of these things that boys will be boys, those kind of things. And in the end, the message is, don't be that man, be better, be the best man that you can be. And we as men can put a stop to these toxic masculine behaviors. Now, what they got was a very divisive move. Now, the thing is Gillette went from be the best a man can get, where they're the alpha male getting everything, to this more aware, woke male, which is very different. So we have people like Piers Morgan. And if you don't know who Piers Morgan is, he is a British news anchor, very, very right wing. He got fired for going off about Meghan anyway, me just died, I can't remember. So Megan Windsor now. And so basically he's like, I've used Gillette razors my entire life, but this absurd virtue signaling PC guff may drive me away to a company less eager to fuel the current pathetic global assault on masculinity. Let boys be damn boys, let men be damn men. So he liked the old message. And then you have someone like Samuel Decker who's saying, I was raised to always try and be better, to treat women with respect and to know that we are equals. I don't see any problem with having suggesting we should expect more from the men out there that aren't living up to that standard. What Gillette has done is they have said, okay, we don't want just anyone buying from us. We're okay with the Piers Morgans going away. We are changing our value system and we are changing our story to be more in line with this new way of this new masculinity message. And they narrowed their audience. And by doing so, they create loyalty and they create more engagement in the company and in the message, because they have the best mencanbe.org and the best mencanbe hashtag, and it's being used in properly, unlike the hashtag race together, which was being baristas just inappropriately passed. This one is being used appropriately. So why it works, like I said, it's realignment of the brand's values, and they're being very clear about what their new values are. And they understood, before they put it out, they knew that this was going to be controversial, which is good because they get a lot of PC for it. And we're talking about it how many years later? So they knew that they were going to get this controversy, and they were okay with that because they were realigning the corporate values and they were changing the message. And they created this nonprofit, and they are being a part of that movement. They're being part of that discussion, and it's becoming part of their culture, and they own the controversy. They knew it was going to happen, and they were totally okay with that. Patagonia is a company that is very on track with its value system. This ad here, don't buy this jacket, was a Black Friday ad, and it's a Patagonia jacket, and they're saying don't buy this jacket. Now in the small print, which isn't here, it said that if you need a jacket, buy this jacket. It's the best jacket you'll ever get. But if you don't need a jacket, don't buy a jacket, because our consumerism is killing the planet. Patagonia is very much about buying slow fashion, buy fashion that's well made, so that you only need one jacket for 10 years instead of buying 10 jackets a year, and save the planet. Now, Patagonia's founder just donated the entire company to fight climate change. So this is very in line with the company's message. So they can get on those climate change causes, and people will feel that that's appropriate. Like I said, alignment with values, involved in change, and they mean what they say. They walk the walk, they walk the talk. So some other companies that have done this, Dove, they did this 15 years. We've had the Real Woman, Real Beauty, and Dove has done really well with this body image women's cause. Now, this is Victoria's Secret's version of that. And I'm pretty sure you can tell why this may have gotten a ton of backlash. The perfect body. And most women do not identify with the perfect body. They identify with Real Woman, Real Beauty. So that's why they want to be a part of the Dove story. They want to buy Dove products because they see themselves in them. Where the perfect body, it's only a very few people that actually look like that. However, it's not totally a bad thing for Victoria's Secret to have done this, because Victoria's Secret creates products for that body. I personally cannot buy anything in there. They have nothing in my size. So they have definitely shown, they're narrowing their market, and they're talking to their specific market. The people who value looking this way, people who want or aspire to this, they're going to identify with that, and they're going to want those products. Of course, that's the, how marketing and advertising has always been. Not saying that it's right, not saying that it's wrong. I'm saying that it works, and it still works today, even though there are people out there who want to be a part of a cause. How many of you utilized LinkedIn and saw this photo or read a news article about Braden Wallachy, who put this picture of him crying on LinkedIn, along with a story about having to lay some people off? So this is the vulnerability story I want to talk to you about today. And it's about sharing your personal vulnerability, your brand's vulnerability. You make someone in your office makes a mistake. You're going to be vulnerable in telling that, and you want to be vulnerable in telling that story to the audience to gain engagement. There is a right way and there is a wrong way. Now, Braden Wallachy did it the wrong way. He claims that he's okay with that, and one of his employees did get a job because of it. However, he did get a ton of ridicule. He got a ton of trolls, people posting pictures of them crying, making fun of him, and the whole thing went viral. And now this is something that he's going to be known for. Now, five-time college dropout, probably doesn't really care, but it is an issue if you don't want that reaction when you tell a story about something that is personal, something about making a mistake, maybe feeling bad, depressed, maybe you're wanting to talk about not being motivated, or, you just screwed up with a client, or you lost a client, or you had to let someone go, as in the case of Braden Wallachy. So we're going to take a look at what Braden did and why it was so wrong, so that you know what not to do. Because these are the stories that people really identify with, and they want to know that you're real. So this is what he wrote. This will be the most vulnerable thing I'll ever share. Please do not do that, because you're just stating something. You're not, it's kind of like saying, yeah, it's the most vulnerable thing I'll ever share. See, pat myself on the back. We're making a point. You're telling somebody what this is. Not a good idea. So I've gone back and forth with whether to post this or not. Well, he's not being walking the walk or talking the talk. He's being wishy-washy. We just had to lay off a few of our employees. This is a few of our employees being very generic, vague. I've seen a lot of layoffs over the last few weeks on LinkedIn. Most of those are due to the economy or whatever other reason. Ours, my fault. Great, he's going to take responsibility for what has happened. I made a decision in February and stuck with that decision for far too long. I've done it. You've probably done it. We've all done it. And then somebody else pays that price. Now, but he is giving himself an out by saying, now I know my team will say, we made that decision together, but I led us into it. So he's not really taking responsibility. He is, but he isn't, because he's got that out. Wishy-washy again. It's not going to be well taken. And because of those failings, I had to do today the toughest thing I've ever had to do. We've always been a people first business, and we always will be. Really important to state, hey, people are important to us. Great. But days like today, I wish I was a business owner that was only money driven and didn't care about who he hurt. And I'll explain why that statement isn't so great in a little bit, but I'm not. So I just want people to see that not every CEO out there is a cold-hearted and doesn't care when he or she have to lay people off. I'm sure there are hundreds and thousands of others like me, the ones you don't see talked about because they didn't lay off 5,500 or 5,000 employees. They laid off 1, 2, or 3. And here's the thing. He's claiming that he is a CEO. I get a lot of small companies are out there saying, hey, I'm a CEO, and you can say that, you can do that, and that's all great, fine and dandy, but you are putting yourself on the same level as someone who is a corporate CEO. And you are going to be judged in the same way. So it's great for, trying to say, hey, I'm a CEO, I'm building this, perfect. But understand that there is a negative, there could be a fallout in that, hey, are you really a CEO? What is my definition of a CEO compared to your definition of a CEO? So, because, anyway, there's all of those types of things. Not saying it's bad to be that. It's not. It's totally fine. You have your reasons for doing it, and I applaud them, and I think they're great. Just know that if you are going to compare yourself to CEOs out there in the world, just like he has done here, you will be judged like one. Now, I know it is a professional to tell my employees that I love them. Once again, he's making a statement saying that I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I am. But from the bottom of my heart, I hope they know how much I do. Every single one, every single story, every single thing that makes them smile, and every single thing that makes them cry. Their families, their friends, their hobbies. And I've always hired people based on who they are as people, and people with great hearts and great souls. And I can't think of a lower moment than this. Now, there is a reason why this had such a viral response. The way that he has written this is all about I feel bad. I had to do this. I'll take responsibility, but not really. I'm looking for sympathy. I feel bad, and I want you to feel sorry for me. Woe is me. Sympathy is not the response that you want when you're telling a story about your vulnerability. Sympathy it leaves us feeling uncomfortable. We do things like placate people by saying, oh, when one door closes, another one opens, or there's someone for everyone out there. We don't really want to hear how bad they're feeling because we don't want to sit with them, but we feel bad about it. And we do feel for them and we care about them, but we just want it to go away. We want them to be the strong, happy person that we know that they are. But we don't identify, we don't understand what they're going through. We just want them to get over it. That's sympathy. Or, they've lost someone and we're scared that we're going to lose someone too. So if we give them a like or make a comment, maybe the luck gods will make sure that that isn't us. It's not, they don't completely see themselves in your shoes. Well, when we think about Braden's story, most people are scared that they're going to lose their job. So they're not going to really identify with the guy that is laying people off. Now, most people that lay people off understand the pain and we're able to empathize with him, although I'm not really sure that they would want to do it the same way that he did it. But they're fewer people because there's fewer of us out there that have employees that we would have to lay off. So he's not understanding the audience that he has. So how to fix his story? Now, the one thing he should have done is take the emotion out of writing the story. How many times have you been upset about something and you've written it thinking that, they need to know this? And you think that you're being professional, you think that you're being unemotional, and then you go back and read it and you realize that it comes across as victimization, as blame, as you can see the anger or the pain in your writing, but that you didn't mean to be there. So if you are emotional about your vulnerability story, write it out, sit on it, and go back to it when you're feeling a little bit better, and then edit in order to understand that you're writing it from a position of strength, a position of, the story's over and I feel good about it now. Or maybe give yourself that second thing, well, whether or not this is applicable to be sending out. In his case, use the pronoun I less and them more, because he was trying to set himself up as the hero of the story, and really, or it was coming across as the victim of the story. He's the victim of circumstance. He's a victim of a decision that he made, and not the hero of the story. Because in actual fact, he's the villain in the story. He's the villain in the story, and the people that he laid off, which was all of 2 people, and that's fine. Like, I can understand laying off 2 people is horrible. But once again, that comes with that CEO thing. I'm a CEO, so I'm going to be identified as a corporate CEO. Now, them more. So it should have been about, I had to do this, setting himself kind of up as the villain, the conduit of why, this is bad and we don't want to be here and I don't want to be here. and make them, the people that have been laid off, it's about them. It's about where they're going to be. And the fact that they're great employees and he would love to have them back and he would love to keep them. And anyone that needs an employee that does A or B or C, these people are the right people. Now he's more of a hero because he's helping someone out and there's a transition and there's a lot of things to storytelling, but remove all that self-importance and all that ego, because this story is all about how he's feeling and his self-importance, and use appropriate professional images. A picture of you crying is probably not going to be well received on LinkedIn, regardless of what the story is. And once again, don't be the victim. Properly cast everyone that you're talking about. Know who is the hero, who's the guide, who's the villain, who's the victim, who's the damsel in distress. Make sure that everyone's got the right role in the story that you're telling, because you want to elicit empathy. In order to tell a vulnerability story and get the most out of it, you want people to empathize with you, because when they empathize with you, they understand it. They can see themselves in that position. And not only that, they've probably been there before or in a similar situation. So they understand you. And as soon as they understand you, they align with your brand, because we trust people who are like us. We understand people who have gone through what we have gone through. The world today has a common experience that we can talk to anyone about, and that's COVID. Now, of course, there's division in there as well, but if all you do is talk to somebody about what were you doing during COVID? Lockdown. What were you doing during the lockdown? Everyone has a story about what they were doing about at the lockdown. That's something that you can go to in order to make a connection with someone and then find those common threads that you can weave into your tapestry and make a bigger story for your brand. And how do you generate empathy and not sympathy? Because once again, sympathy is an uncomfortable feeling that we don't want to sit with. We want to go away. So we're going to placate you and we're going to give you a card and we're going to hopefully you go deal with that and come back when you're feeling better. Empathy is, I'm really interested. I understand. I want to help. I want to be there with you. I'm going to sit with you in your pain because I've been there and I get it. Or maybe they haven't been there. But when you tell a story of vulnerability properly, you are going to give your audience something that makes it theirs. And that is the lessons that you learned and how they can maneuver themselves through it if they ever find themselves in that position. So you're making it about the audience, not about yourself. First question though, when you're thinking of doing an empathy or vulnerability story, you should ask yourself, should you even tell the story? Not every vulnerability story should be told. So determine the objective. If you are telling the story, hoping that people will feel sorry for you, that's not a good reason to tell the story. If you want people to know how bad you're feeling, probably not the great thing. If you're trying to tell that boyfriend that you something, but you're going to do it the passive aggressive way or do it the public way and post it on Facebook instead of talking to them directly, don't tell that story. Ask yourself, who will hear the story? So determine your audience. Who are you talking to and what is important to them? You have to understand that your vulnerability story is about them. So even though you're the one that went through it, you are trying to teach them something, guide them through something, help them transform. What is the story about? So you know to determine the plot. What are you trying to talk about? And who is the story about? So determine those roles. So you want to state your vulnerability. In his case, he goes, I had to lay off 2 people and I feel horrible about it. Or this is the worst day of my life because I had to lay off a couple people. Explain why is that vulnerable? Well, we're a people first company, and having to lay people off makes me feel like I failed in that value. And we're no longer this people first thing because I've put money ahead of them. So what will you do to solve the problem? Creating your vulnerability. So, that's really important. So he could have said, I never want to have to lay someone off again. So when I make a decision about something, I'm going to have a backup plan. I'm going to do A, B, or C to make sure that this never happens again. Now, but you can add a pothole that others can identify with. You know, you may have this great plan to for that never to happen again, but doubt, failure, what's the worst thing that could happen? So your pothole is, if the worst thing happens and you have to lay someone off again, what does that mean? What does that look like? Establish the stakes, something others are fearful of too. So this is where you're going. Now you've done the bad part with the potholes. This should actually be not fearful, but you're establishing the stakes. Something, you're looking at the best case scenario. Oh no. Establish something other. That's right, the stakes. The stakes. What are you going to lose? What are you going to personally lose if you fail? If that pothole comes to fruition, I apologize for having to go back. If that pothole comes from fruition, that whatever that self-doubt is, that failure, that negativity, if that comes to fruition, what is the worst thing that can happen? Are you going to lose your business? Are you going to lose your credibility? Are you going to lose great employees? What if A happens? What is the worst thing that could happen? Like, let's say I'm scared I can't pay my bills. So what is the worst thing that's going to happen if I can't pay my rent? I got to buy a tent and live on the downtown east side. You know, that is an extreme. So get extreme. Like, what am I going to lose if I don't make it? But if I do make it, this is what's going to happen. If I'm able to make sure that I do A, B, and C, it won't have to lay anyone else off ever again. And I'll be able to build a business slowly and more with a better foundation, and a business that people can rely on, my employees can rely on for as long as they want to be with me. That could have worked. Now, what's a catharsis? The realization. What is it that you need to do to succeed? So what are those tasks that he's about to do? So if he wants to do A, what is that step that he needs to take in order to make sure that he gets number 6 and not number 5? And then what's that call to action, that next step? What is the thing that he's going to do? The ending, the ending, like back to, if, you know, I can't pay my rent. Well, what do I need to do? I need to go out and make so many phone calls in order to have so many clients. So that's what I'm about to go do. Thanks very much for being part of my vulnerability story. It's a stronger way because you're going up, you're going down, you're showing that there is a solution, that you are going to be, yeah, you're in this vulnerability, but you have a plan. And if the plan works out, great, this is what you're going to get. If the plan doesn't work out, well, oh my God, this is the worst thing known to man. But in order to make sure that I get the best thing out there, this is what I'm going to go do now. So if you want to know more, head over to my website, see you there, that kind of thing. So I don't know, do we have questions? Is that a thing?
I don't have as much a question, but I find it interesting, especially when you were talking about villains. It reminds me of how certain stories have been used, and then you get that perspective change, like the Disney movie Maleficent, right, where they changed the perspective to the villain, but they still managed to make her such a relatable character.
Well, you bring up a really good point in storytelling in today's world. You know, we can look back at various stories or TV shows or what people consumed on the mass basis to see what we enjoyed. Today's audience really loves the anti-hero. So that villain is called the anti-hero. We don't think they have, you know, they have this thing that they got to redeem. They make decisions that are, you know, they think they're doing the right thing, but in essence, they're not. Game of Thrones, awesome at this, right? Where you have those, they killed off the heroes. Okay, I gotta admit, I read the books. I didn't watch the TV show. I read the books, and I gotta admit, when they killed off the heroes, I was like, yeah, this is the series for me. And then you get further into it, and all of a sudden, you know, Jaime is You know, it's the things that he's doing that seem really, really terrible, he's doing because in reality, that's the way life works. So if I want to help people, I got to do some bad things in order for the greater good. Is that a real? And you know, so that's that anti-hero is a huge thing. Who else is really good at that? Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is the perfect anti-hero. The guy that's just, you know, there's a greater good and he's just making bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, but you know, he is a good guy underneath it all. So yeah, that's a really important piece of storytelling, and knowing, you know, which person, what kind of story you're telling. Well, who is the hero? There's tons of different heroes. There's the classic hero, the one that's perfect, the one that can do no wrong. Back in the Greek days, you have like the superheroes, right? They get maybe an Achilles heel. That's about the end of it. That one thing, that the kryptonite that will get rid of them. But you have other heroes. I mean, for brand storytelling, the everyday hero story is probably the number one story that hero that you're going to be talking about, because we are the everyday heroes. And we're talking about everyday heroes, whether or not you're talking about your story, your brand story, because don't forget, your brand is a person onto itself. Your brand can have a personal story and it can have a business story, just like you can have a personal story and you can have a professional story. So, or whether or not you're talking about your customers and their story, it's still the everyday hero. You're probably not going to talk about the anti-hero, although we love those stories.
It just made, when you said villain, like that he's the villain in this story, that made me think of that kind of anti-hero and how to, you know, that he didn't play it properly to be the proper anti-hero.
That's right. He could have changed it, right? So even if he wanted to do it as the anti-hero, right, where he is the villain and he's the one that's had to, I'm the boss and I had to lay people off, like horrible bosses, like I'm, you know, I made these bad decisions, but I really thought those decisions were going to take this company to the next level, but it didn't. And I ended up here. Now I got to let these people go. That is a better story than I feel sad because I had to let people go. No one cares that you feel sad. Right? Although I know why he did it. He did it because at the time, you know, we had a bunch of CEOs laying people off by Zoom. Like being very, I don't give a shit about you, you're gone. I don't care about you, you're gone. And he's trying to be the foil to that. He's trying to show that he's not that way, and that there are good CEOs out there who do care about whether or not. Now, the thing is most CEOs that have to let people go, even if they let people go that way, they do care. They are upset. They just don't know how to do it properly. So they feel sympathy, not empathy. They feel bad for their people. And they know that they're letting them go. They feel bad about it. So they just want it to be over quick. Here's your letter, or here's your this, here's your that. We can't give you severance because we don't have the money. But they don't say that. They just say, you're gone, because they don't have to deal with it, because it makes them feel bad. Maybe that's too optimistic. Maybe, I mean, there's got to be some of them out there that are just, yeah, we get rid of them. I can think of one that begins with an E, first name begins with an E, last name begins with an M, or maybe the one that begins with a J and last name begins with a B. I can see them just looking at the thing going, yeah, we just need to get rid of them. So there are those ones out there, but for the most part, people understand that, yeah, this sucks. But we have to be professional about it. We can't be liable. And there's the other thing, especially in the States, where liability is a huge thing. And you can't say, okay, well, we're going to feel for you. We're going to make all these promises to help you, because they could get sued, because everybody's really sue crazy down there. So all those idealistic things that people think these CEOs should do, and you know, it's not always possible, even though we think it is. But maybe it is possible. We just need to go and figure out how to do it and show them that it's possible, because they just can't see it. But because they're in the middle of their own mud pit, their own rut, their own challenges. We got to stop judging people so much and start understanding them. And that's the difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy, you judge people. Empathy, you try to understand them and the reasons for what they do. But that takes effort and that takes time. And even I'm not always empathetic. I mean, this whole topic came from a conversation I was having with my son about the homeless people in Vancouver. And he just looked at me, he said, Mom, let me get this straight. My mom, who cries when someone tells them a story, who has more empathy than most people I know, has no empathy for the homeless. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? I care about them. Of course I care about them. I see them every day outside my window. I walk by them every day. I feel bad. And I went, Mom, yeah, you got sympathy, but you don't have any empathy. And that's what got me thinking about what is the difference between sympathy and empathy? Why is sympathy? And then that's when I saw Braden's stories, like, yeah, that's what happens when we, sometimes the things that we listed as sympathy and not empathy. And that's why vulnerable brand stories fall flat. Any other questions out there? Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. You know what? Thank you so much for having me today. I really did enjoy this. I love being able to talk about brand storytelling and help people understand how to tell their story and which stories to tell out there. You can always find more information at marketappeal.com. There is a ton of resources to help you. So it doesn't even cost you anything.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon. And I hope people can reach out and learn more about these differences of eliciting sympathy and empathy. And, so we can all get better at just being able to start these conversations.
Mm-hmm. And have these conversations. And, it comes down to understanding what your brand's about. What is your brand about? And then making sure that you create that brand to be about that. And sometimes a cause fits into that brand. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes a vulnerability story fits into that brand. Sometimes it doesn't. Just remember that when you're telling a story about your vulnerability, you want to tell it from a place of strength, not a pit. You need to get out of the mud pit first.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much. Have a great day.